Hello everyone and welcome again to my SDNPM channel where we speak about project management, consulting stuff and other project management related things. So today we are going to speak about the project charter and how to build a project charter. And let's start by speaking about what's the project charter. Actually, the project charter is the birth certificate for the project. Before having the birth certificate or the project charter, as a project manager, you should not commence any activities related to the projects, because the project charter actually includes the essential information that ensures the harmony between you and the project sponsor, who is the key stakeholder for you, like agreeing on the goals, the project goals, agreeing on the case or the project feasibility, agreeing on the budgetary details and other stuff we'll discuss later. Ensuring that there is a project charter for sure is going to lessen the possibility for having conflicts during the project execution, and lessen also the possibility of the project failure. The project charter for a project manager is the reference document that he builds on top of it all the next project activities. And the most important thing in the project charter for a project manager is defining the project manager authorities, as he can rely on that document to commence his work immediately. Moving on to when and who works on the project charter. That depends actually on the on what organization you work at. Let's say you work on medium or small size organization. It's very likely that you are going to build the project charter by yourself. But vice versa, if you work on a big enterprise, then there is a department, they should have a department called PMO, Project Management Office, who is responsible for building or one of his responsibilities is to build the project charter, because the PMO actually manage the organizational strategy and ensure that the proper projects and related projects are actually built, and these projects are going to provide the benefits that are going to provide the expected values for the strategic values they expect. For the sake of more discussion on the project charter, I'm going to assume that you work on medium or small size company, and let's see what you need to build in the project charter, or in other words, what's the project charter components. I'm going to list the components down with very quick description. However, these components, when I speak about the components, if you get any project charter template, you will find most of these components there, and you can tailor the document the way you want. If you don't have any template and you could not find one, you can rely on these details to build your own. So first of all, when you start writing the project charter, you need to add the project description. What's the project you are going to work on? That comes from the project sponsor or the person who assigned you the project. Next, you need to build a very initial business case. Why are we going to work on this project? What's probably the financial feasibility or any feasibility that the project got approved on. Next is to list down the project stakeholders, find out who are they and whether they are internal or external, they are going to positively or negatively impact the project. You need to mention all that in your initial analysis of the stakeholders. Next is the project manager, probably yourself and your authorities. And sometimes not only the project manager is assigned in the project charter, sometimes the project assistant or the assistant project manager is assigned as well, sometimes a project coordinator. So all that has to be mentioned in the project charter, which is one of the probably the most important thing in the project charter. Next is the product description. When we speak about the product description, for sure you are working on a project expecting to produce a product. So what would be the final product? What are the deliverables or the components of that product? So that for sure when you move on, you need to take care of these deliverables along the way. And next is the project goals. What are the SMART goals of the projects? Not the goals of the project. You need to make these goals SMART, measurable, and all the features of the SMART goals, you need to make them SMART, and how they are going to fit into the project or how they are going to fit into the organizational strategy goals. The pre-assigned resources who are going to work on the project. If you can list them down, if you can mention their numbers, all that will help, considering that you are in a very initial phase. Next in the project charter is the project assumptions. Project assumptions are what you think is true or what you believe is true, and what you think is actually true, and you could not verify because of lack of data or anything else, but you assume is true. So these are project assumptions. Next is the project risks. So far, you need to have some understanding of the project risks. Many project managers think of project risks as what could negatively impact the projects, but it's not correct. The right thing is project risks are what could negatively or positively impact the project. Next in the project charter is the project constraints. Constraints are what are the conditions the project has to work under and adhere to, such as regulatory requirement or compliance requirements or anything else similar to this. Next in the list is the approvals list. Approvals list, for sure, if you want to, you are in the very early phase of the project. So if you want to move on, you need some approvals like financial approvals, probably entrance approvals, and etc. You need to list all the approvals down, whatever you could know so far. And also mention who needs to provide these approvals, their names, their authorities, and etc. Anything related to the approvals. And at the end of the document, you need to mention the project exit criteria. And you need to be very clear on project exit criteria, because we are not speaking about project closure. Project closure is one of them, but probably you are going to hit a wall in the middle of the project. So you need to know how to exit from the project in this case, and you need to actually define what does it mean hit the wall. What does it mean? You need to have something actually measurable in order to define that, and define also how you are going to close the project in that case. Moving on, now let's speak. Now we list of components of the project charter, but probably as a project manager you will not have very, let's say clear list of what you need to do. As project managers, we used to have checklists in order to complete the tasks. So I'm gonna try to give you a list based on my experience, so that it will ease your life. So this is the checklist you need to follow in order to prepare the project charter. First of all, you expect the project manager, the project sponsor assigned you the project. However, in this phase, in the first phase, you need to ensure that you get the buy-in from the project sponsor and get his support as well. If you fail in this action, you are going to suffer all along the way. The project sponsor support is one of the main things you need to get. Next, you need to study and understand the organizational strategy and understand its relation to your project. This will help you complete anything else. Once it's completed, move on to initial understanding of the project requirement from very high level from the project sponsor. That means like 1 to 2 meetings with the project sponsor to identify the needs that will help you move on with the next steps or complete the next steps. Next is identify and analyze the stakeholders of the project. You will need that. You will know why soon. Next is understand the initial requirements of these stakeholders. Whatever you do, you need to write it down. You need to document it. You need to have a wasted time. Anyone can leave. Anyone can change his mind. As a project manager, you have to get things formalized. Next in the steps, as soon as you have the requirements from the stakeholders, you need to initially document the project goals, the constraints, and the success criteria. By this time, you should have enough clarity to do this. Next, move on to writing down the initial scope, the initial project scope. That's very crucial part, because you got the requirement from the project sponsor, you got the requirement and needs and wants from the stakeholders. So you can build sort of an initial project scope. As soon as you have it, now move on to building the second and third artifact in your project so far, which are the risk register and the issues log. You can write some initial issues and initial risks you could identify so far. 100% you will have some. And after that, you need to conduct an initial discussion about the budget with the concerned stakeholders. He could be the project sponsor, or could be the CFO or any other parties, but you need to have preliminary discussion about the budget. So far, you have the scope, you have the budget. Now you need to build sort of an initial timeline. So the goal of this initial timeline is to satisfy the project sponsor expectation. However, it should be realistic. Don't exaggerate negatively nor positively. Give him something realistic, but at the same time satisfy his needs. You have all these details. Now you need to go for a second review for the project charter, complete the missing points, bridge any gaps, and the final step would be to go to the project sponsor to get his approval on this document. And also some organizations requires other people approvals as well. So get all that, and by then you should have project charter approved, and you have your authority to commence the work on the project. So far we spoke about the project charter from a waterfall perspective, a waterfall methodology. But actually in the agile methodology or the agile projects, the concept could have a very, very crucial difference. When we speak about building the project charter in the waterfall methodology, we aim to have as complete as possible project charter, and we aim to not change this project charter unless we have to. Vice versa, in the agile methodology or agile projects, we aim to build the minimal project charter, because in the agile projects, mainly we start with most uncertainty possible, and then we get clearer as we move on. The same thing applies. The same thing applied to the project charter. So we start with minimal components. We start with minimal clarity on these components, and we constantly keep updating the project charter as we move on and as we have more clarity as we progress on the project. And probably finally, last not least, one of the points people always ask about is whether the project charter is a contract or not. Project charter is an internal document and an agreement, you can say, between you and your superior in terms of project organization. And this document gives you authority to commence working on the project, but it does not have any contracts or agreements with third parties, anyone outside the organization. So based on it, you can build contracts, but it's not a contract. It's not a contract. So I think that's all on my mind, project charter. And I hope that helped you somehow. Have a nice day. See you on another video.